Is it?
Yeah, you're recording it now, so you
All right,
can
I'm gonna
pause it.
stop. I'll pause it.
Have a great meeting, guys.
Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Welcome everyone to our timely topics for October. Our presenter today is Candice Nooy of Lamb Weston. Candice, take it away.
Awesome. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited to be doing this timely topic. It is one that very much so resonates with the moment that I'm living in. So maybe it's a little bit selfishly that I'm trying to learn as much as I can from this group, as well as kind of spur the conversation. Cindy, would you, if there are any chat questions, would you be my gal that's going to
I'm on it.
help me get, okay, perfect, great.
I'm on
awesome.
it. Cindy's off.
Okay, I'm not paying attention to that. So if you guys
I
can
am.
handle that, that would be amazing. Again, I think most of you guys know me. All of you guys are familiar faces to me. I am Candice Nooy. I oversee the consumer and customer affairs, business and fulfillment and everything for Lamb Weston. We are at a very pivotal moment of growth here in my group. We actually partner with a group called Lamb Weston Meyer, who runs all of our European and African business for the company. So any fries that are sold in those regions are generally through Lamb Weston Meyer, but there is actually a plan to integrate all of those contacts through my team as well, even though that business will remain separate. So that is a fairly large lift and a quick integration for us. So again, like I said, I'm really hoping to learn as much as I can contribute to this as well. This is going to be very conversational. So I hope you guys all have come with things that you can share or questions that you have. I sent out some emails prior to this meeting, just trying to gauge what people are curious about in the world of global support. And I got some very cool recurring themes. So it looks like everyone has similar interests in this area. Before I get started though, too much further, if you guys would just make sure to have your name on your Zoom, you can actually click on that 3-dot button and change it to your name and then your company name as well. Just for everybody else that's on, so we know where you're coming from when you pitch in the conversation as well. So I wanted to start us off with a little video that I thought was pretty cute. Maybe some of you guys have seen this video, and please let me know if for some reason you guys can't hear it, but it is just basically showing you how it can get a little confusing between languages, right? When we're talking about global support, we're clearly also talking about how do we manage many different languages as efficiently, well, when I say efficiently, I mean cost efficiently as possible, as well as providing that customer what they need, right? So I thought this was a really cute depiction of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and play that real quick.
Okay.
Uh-oh, hold on.
Oh, no audio.
There's no
Oh.
audio on that, Candice. Do
Oh,
you
there
want that
isn't?
again? No.
I think you have to do play with original audio, computer sound or something.
Do you
Yeah.
think if I go to YouTube and do it?
No, on your options up top, you have to stop sharing and then reshare with computer sound.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
And then reshare with computer sound. How do you do that?
Like when you say share, when you look at share, if you look at the caret, there's a menu with some drop down things, and you want to do
On your share screen.
with original sound or computer sound, whichever it says.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Yep, I see it. Genius. Did not see. I'm learning new things already.
Good coaching, Linda.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, you guys let me know. Please speak up if you can't hear the sound, because that's kind of the most important part.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät Überlebensradar.
Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you...
speaker, over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
Okay, so translation is a piece of what we're doing, right? But clearly there is more than to the global support than just, translating things. There's cultural differences, there's all those, dialects and things like that. So I thought that was really cute, just to get us kicked off on the topic. And please, again, like I said, share your thoughts, share your struggles, your journey in this area as well. I would love to hear, but I prepared just a few slides to get us kicked off with some conversation starters. And again, like I said, I was seeing lots of similarities in what people were kicking back to me. So I thought we'd go ahead and get started with the staffing piece. And let's just start with, I think this is where we're at. Do your recruiting efforts or targeted backgrounds differ for your overseas operations, right? Are you looking for different things for managing your global teams versus your domestic teams? And, what kinds of things are you thinking of when you're starting those recruiting processes? And are you using different methods when you're doing that? I know that there's recruiting companies that specifically target different areas of customer service and, global different languages and things like that. So if anyone wants to respond to that one. Sorry, I'm going to open up my screen so I can see all your lovely faces.
Hi, Candice, it's Jill.
Hey.
Hi. We do not use our criteria is the same. So what we would look for the US would be the same we would look for anybody overseas. However, because our business is much smaller overseas, we're usually looking for a candidate that has, I'd say for consumer care, it's the same, but we're also looking for a candidate that has other experiences because they're going to have multiple hats, where in the US, they would probably just do consumer care. They wouldn't do as much as customer and logistics and quality and everything that they might do overseas because it's a smaller team, a smaller business. They need to wear multiple hats. So in that aspect, yes, maybe we are looking for a little bit more criteria, but the consumer care piece of it is still the same.
Okay, and do those teams operate fully remote? Are they in office over there? How are they organized?
They were in office. Now they are fully remote. For other parts of regions of the world, they're just not really opened up to come back into the office. It's still a lot of masking, it's still a lot of criteria. So we are still fully remote there.
Jill, where are your large hubs overseas then?
We are in Mumbai, India is the large office, Manila in the Philippines, and Guadalajara.
Okay. Very nice. Anybody else want to answer that as well? So everyone's generally targeting the same sorts of recruiting efforts that they would internally. Or when I say internally, I mean domestically. Awesome. All right. And then are you guys using, and this was actually a question I got from Jill, so maybe you can answer this too, but how are you currently managing that? Are you having them do voice offshore as well? What kinds of hours of operations are they using? And are you outsourcing this to a business partner, or are you guys managing it internally within your internal management scheme? I will say, personally, we're not quite here yet. The plan is to manage that internally and hopefully partner with an outsourced group that has more knowledge in that area than I do, right? I'd like to leverage somebody that's a professional in that global business. And so to me, when I'm scaling up in that global area, that to me sounds ideal. But if somebody else has gone through that transition themselves, I'd love to hear from you and learn from you as well.
I'll share my experience. I mean, all things are on the table here at Hershey. So offshore, we do, how do I say this? They will do phone for the region. So, and it's actually a cell phone. So it rings into somebody's cell phone and they answer the phone and handle the consumer there. So I feel like it's very, I mean, I don't even know if this is old school. It's just an old way of thinking, but just the volume hasn't warranted more than a person or two. So there's no kind of not a need for a provider at this point. But as we're looking at the globe and looking, you don't necessarily have to be in the US to support the US. What does that look like? I mean, we've always kept voice in the region. So our agents that handle US and Canada are in US and Canada for voice and handle China or in China. So we've always kept that, but it's been brought to the table, like, do we need that? And what does it look like if they're not in the region? I don't have an answer. So
Jill, that person in China reports directly to your internal structure. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. They're not being managed by a call center or anything like that.
Right.
Okay.
Outside of the region. Now, the US, we do use a Premier Response as our provider for our US and Canada business.
Okay. Interesting. So your volume hasn't picked up enough globally in order to push you towards maybe needing more of a team over there. And
Correct.
if you did,
correct,
would you find it more beneficial to possibly outsource that?
Perhaps. I mean, like, we've kind of kicked around a lot of ideas of what that might look like in the future as they look at global business plans and growth. And I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just kind of hoping I asked through this question out to see what other people do, because I really have no idea.
Yeah, no, and I really don't know what best practices are in this area either. Is there, Jill, how long have you guys been had that global support piece?
As long as I've been in the company, it's always been that way. So, I am learning more about rules and regulations in other parts of the world, but I think if we wanted to grow, I'd really need a partner that would know that. I don't know it.
It's definitely nice to have that foundation, isn't it? Yeah. Anybody else with that experience, Brian?
Somebody else.
No, I just have a comment. This is Brian. I would think if you did need some additional help internationally, every country has different regulations. And if you had an outsourcer that was familiar with the regulations of that country or that region, I think that might be a big benefit to consider.
Yeah. Steve, did you have something too?
Yeah, I did, Candice. I mean, this goes back when my days at Orbitz, but we were using Teleperformance here in the US for our original call center. And as the demands for reducing costs increased, we went offshore to the Philippines, but we wanted to make sure, and we stayed with Teleperformance, but we wanted to make sure that the vendor that we chose had travel experience. So they knew what they were getting into with the airline and hotel type of operation that we had. So we wanted to make sure that the provider had that expansion capability. And then at some point we needed to diversify. We went into India, and we found out that the voice and accent, I will say, resistance from the US market was pretty significant. And so we, then we went looked for more opportunities, and we ended up in Mauritius, of all places.
Wow.
And that was culturally not good, because it's that the culture in there is a much more it's just a little harder. It's a combination of French, African, European, and the culture wasn't. There was a lot of resistance from our consumers, not so much about the voice and accent, but just the abruptness of the way they dealt with people. So we ended up the last step in that big chain was actually ending up in Central America, which was a positive, because it wasn't. It was the Spanish accent was not as didn't drive as much negativity in the U.S. And it was easy for our people, our management in-house, to get to Central America, much easier than going to the Philippines or to India. So it took us a while to figure that out. And I think the learning was, think about what your business demands and what kind of calls you get, and how much, what is the culture of that country you're going to? Do you think it's a good fit? Why or why not? And give some thought to the voice and accent. It's pretty significant in some instances. And who are your customers, and what do you think they're going to go for?
I think that's a really interesting perspective, because I think so many people think of global support as, the support for your customers outside of the US, but so many people like you, Steve, right, are trying to figure out how to best manage their organization. And there's a huge cost benefit to taking your US business also outside of the US. So I love that input. I also imagine that the time zone piece is easier working with a group out of Central America, right?
Yeah, it is. Although from what we understand, what I understand, the folks in India and in the Philippines, because as this has evolved literally over the last 20 years, at least to some degree, they've come to accept the fact that they're going to work that opposite end of the time clock. And if you need help, the normal business day of, say, 7 in the morning to 10 at night in the US, they're going to have to do whatever they need to do on the other side of the globe.
Very
Candice,
cool.
one thing you might consider, I had global when I was at Gallo, and we looked at the areas where we were dominant and where we needed the other language speakers. So we hired in for French, for example, and Spanish, because those are popular in Canada, where we had significant business, and in Mexico, where we had significant business. So we had those on staff in our domestic contact center. And then when we were overseas, as we grew, particularly in Asia Pacific, we ended up adding in a few people to our sales team that were they didn't have a direct responsibility to me, but they were a dotted line support. So in Japan, I had a person who was assigned as a dotted line support. So if they got contacts over there in Japan, we could do it in that way. But they had a dotted line support to us. And if we needed to escalate things, sometimes they had to escalate to the States to be resolved, particularly on some claims things and so forth. But having the local presence was really beneficial. So there's kind of a hybrid way to do that.
Right. Yeah. And we have all of our salespeople. So, they're all in country, and that's who we get a lot of our complaints from. And they all speak English. So it makes it a really easy way to sort of, be able to handle that business without actually speaking the language. That reminded me, though, I saw a really interesting statistic, Marie, that said customer support teams can reach 90% of their total online GDP with only 16 languages at this point. So there are, right, 16 of those languages fall within that 90% of your business. So I thought that was really interesting.
The other
I
thing you
also,
could consider is a translation company. I used Language Line both at Dial for 15 years that I was at Dial, and I used it at Gallo. And you literally get a translator on the line with you in the phone call. But
oh, wow.
Language Line also translated our written documents. And one of the areas that we used them for was to translate things like manuals and equipment operations. We used to use the Language Line process for not just the call center, but because we had a contract, we could use them to work with when we had to go over and do some winemaking structures and different things like that as we were doing some teaching, as we were doing equipment changes and those kinds of things. We used Language Line for that, and it came in, extremely handy. Better than Google Translate, because Google Translates we found was not always accurate for the wine business.
Yeah, definitely not accurate.
I'll echo that, and that works well, Maria, as you know, with lower volumes, right? So, or infrequent languages. So, and, we found that the consumer's understanding on that too, right? They're patient, they'll wait through that. So, but you really have to cut to the chase pretty quickly because you have the lag in translation, right? Just kind of the process. The other thing is, we at Premier Response, we have a center in Costa Rica, and the not only the access, but certainly the languages are available there. But then you can have, and for larger programs, you don't have the resistance on Steve that you talked about in terms of whether it's language barrier, perceived or imperceived, right? So there's that, but there's also an opportunity, and again, it depends on program size, to be able to maybe put your toe in the water to go non-voice, if a budget's an issue and need to go to the Philippines or certainly India, to kind of put your toe in the water on that and keep voice or domestically or through a translation. So there's a lot of mixes and to kind of trying to experiment with that, that are workable solutions.
Teresa just commented too. Teresa, do you want to unmute and just tell your comment?
Yeah, sure. I have used the Language Line before in a previous position, but at Gorilla Glue, we have a small volume, but we are looking to expand internationally. But right now we use certified languages. Same thing. It's a three-way call between the interpreter, the consumer, and the agent, and it works extremely well.
Do you guys generate, we're also small volume, so we can't really bite off a lot of large budget items that might help in this area. Do you generally find that smaller companies try to digitalize the contact versus doing live call? It's much easier to get, to translate things in text on your own time versus live, right? Is that generally what people are doing?
Well, for us, ours is phone calls, and as far as interpreter service, like someone said, who they use interprets documents. This certified languages, they will interpret documents as well for us. But as far as written communication, we get very, very little. But the language lines work very well.
Anybody else have experience with that?
There's an interesting concept talking about calls coming in from other countries. So yes, traditionally telephone has been the path, the channel, but in-country toll-free numbers can be logistically complex and not inexpensive. What we found and recommend is that when you can switch from a traditional toll-free number to a WhatsApp enabled number, because everyone outside the US uses WhatsApp. And by the way, WhatsApp, since it's also text enabled, you can start to force migrate communication from voice to text, and then you can start to use the more sophisticated digital stuff of translation and things that you don't have to respond to necessarily in real time, and that are maybe easier to automate with a bot of some sort.
Yeah, we right now don't have any international, even though we do a ton of business globally, we don't have any retail presence. So most of the business we do globally is food service. So we are able to either push communication through our sales team, our in-country sales team, or we just don't have those 800 numbers listed on our website. So we do push them to like a web form or something like that.
Neil, could you tell more about the WhatsApp international? Just
Yeah,
wanna make
sure.
Notes.
Yeah, so the US companies have oftentimes, and this has gotten better, I think, have on their packaging, mistakenly, in my view, put in US toll-free numbers or mandate that their customers abroad to call US toll-free numbers to be able to reach the contact center. Typically, US toll-free numbers are not always really even configured in those local telephone networks to be able to even dial out.
Yeah, the
If
North
they
American
can dial
plan.
out, if they can even dial out, the charges are insane. They're not toll-free, not international. And so what companies started to do is they would put in local toll-free numbers. So if you're in Mexico, you would dial, I think it's, I don't know, it's 1-800 or 1-8000. I don't remember what it is. Same thing for each of these countries. However, those toll-free numbers are not always toll-free for people, especially if you're dialing from a mobile phone in those countries. The smart way, I think, to get around that, because so many people outside the US utilize WhatsApp, is to make WhatsApp enabled numbers. They don't have to be toll-free numbers. They can be local numbers. Put those on your website and people can either click and text or click to call, but all of a sudden you've avoided the expensive international fees associated with dialing in.
So
That makes
those
sense?
phone numbers can actually ring through like a normal,
Well, yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Transparent, seamless, almost at no cost, just the person needs to have a
Thank you.
connection to Wi-Fi.
Most of the toll-free numbers that we use domestically work for the North American plan. That's what it's called. And they're pretty much used up. All the 800s are used up. All the 888s are used up. So it would be different if anybody's getting new product lines or coming out with new products, it might make sense to roll those over to something different and try that WhatsApp.
Yeah, that is like widely used by our Asian customers, especially. Well, as I was doing my research this week, I saw another kind of interesting statistic when, people were talking about growing their global business. They were saying the number one thing you should be doing is making sure that your website is translated. I cannot remember what they called it. Maybe you guys know, website localization. Anybody familiar with that? Essentially, it's where, depending on what country, you can choose how many different countries or different translations you provide of your website. But there's companies out there who actually, you can click a drop down right on the website and you can change it to Japanese, or you can change it to Chinese or Mandarin or whatever. And they were saying, because 80% of customers try to solve their own problems, right? That self-service piece. Before reaching out to customer service, that's the number one thing you can do to help streamline your global business, is making sure that your US site is also available to be read in different languages. Anybody on the call have experience with that? Ours is not translatable. So I thought, gosh, that seems like low-hanging fruit. But of course, the way we do business in other countries is slightly different. So I'm not sure everything would be the same. Anybody have some feedback about their experience with that? Has anybody on the call done it? Maybe. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I've seen it where if you're in Canada, you can switch it from US to French.
French.
Yeah, but I haven't seen it I didn't know if I said I was from a different country, if it's reading like my, the address IP and saying, no, you're not, you're from the US.
Could be.
But it's never changed for me, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I have this isn't on our consumer care, but this is Linda from McCormick. There's a website that I follow in German, and sometimes I want to clarify that I'm understanding it correctly, and it switches back and forth to English if I want it to. But I don't believe it's the it's the website itself. I believe that it's Google that does the translation for the website.
Yes, yeah, there is definitely that as well. Because you can, a lot of the times when I'm going and I'm looking up sales leads for our business, I'll try to look up the company site and I'm trying to figure out if it's an actual pre-qualified sales type lead. And I'm like, I can't read Spanish very well. So yeah, Google allows you to translate some things, even though it doesn't do very well. But I think this website localization process is actually, there are tons of companies out there that do it. I saw that Sephora does it, and there's all sorts of food companies that do it that operate pretty widely globally. And I just thought that was a really interesting thing, right? It's like, well, if you're trying to streamline and lower the amount of global context you're getting outside of your core language, you know, you want to make sure that that self-service piece is there first. So I just thought that was an interesting perspective on that.
Well, Robin had a comment. Robin, did you want to share your comment?
Sure. So I'm here to learn, and we're Danone North America, but we're owned by Danone Global, which is based in France. So I'm learning by osmosis what we do on the North American side as well as globally. We do use a translation service, is my understanding, periodically for North America. But we also have bilingual agents because we're in Canada, US, and Mexico. So it's just interesting to hear from others how you guys are handling it.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you, Robin. So can whoever uses like the live translation process, can you explain a little bit more about that? I'm curious as to how, if somebody calls your 1-800 number that speaks a different language, how do you pop in that translation ability?
It's easy. The hardest part is understanding. Some of them it's pretty obvious. If somebody's speaking German or whatever, there are some cards that the language line provides you with some training and some cards for the very most rudimentary phrases, so that you can identify which language it is. Some of the languages are complicated. Chinese is complicated because of the dialects, but some of the simple ones like French and Spanish and German, and some of those are pretty straightforward. So we practiced those because we got the training from Language Line, and we practiced those, and all the agents had them on their desktop. But it's basically you dial a number. Once you can ascertain that you can't understand them, which is pretty quick in the first 2 or 3 words, then you can dial in an interpreter, and they actually come on the line with you, and you choose which language you're trying to get, so that you could choose German or Dutch or French or whatever. For us at Gallo and at Dial for that matter, that part was easy. There were a few strange ones that were hard, and occasionally we'd get something like Tagalog or something like that, Russian, Czech. And at the end of the month, you get a bill that tells you what languages you were speaking into that month and how many minutes were on and so forth. That's how detailed the bill is. But they basically come on and stay on for the duration. So you're talking, it's like the headset type interpreters that you see on television or at the UN or whatever. You're speaking and they're translating it. The other people don't hear you speak. They just hear the translation.
Interesting. And they won't leave the call. Like, do your reps know how to say, hold on just a second?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Everybody, it's just like a normal call, except you're talking to a third person.
Huh, interesting. Okay. And so did you actually have, Marie, when you were there, did you have 800 numbers? Like we have one that is specifically for Canadian French speakers. That way, when they come in, we actually have them go to a voicemail, and then we have somebody call them back.
We had at Gallo, we had Canadian French, but I had a French speaker on staff. I had 2 French speakers on staff, and I had 2 Spanish speakers on staff, because Spanish, practically everybody in California speaks Spanish. So that was easy. French speaker I hired in for specifically, and they were French and German. And so we got those covered because those are the areas where we had more call volume. But actually, most of the time, people speak English to you. If they call you, I found that even if it's broken English, you still get English conversations.
Does anybody else use a translation service?
We do.
Oh,
at
you
La-
do, Vicky.
Yeah, at Land O'Lakes. So we've had it for years, and we use it if a caller comes on and they're not comfortable speaking in English. We'll, say what language you would you prefer? And most people can tell you pretty quickly, that it's Spanish or French. And then you just conference call, right? It's on your phone, you just conference in the translator, and the translator's there and just works with you. And most of the time it's a pretty smooth process. Sometimes it can be clunky because even translators, differ in their ability to translate. So sometimes you get, run into a little trouble there. But we are only in Canada with one product line, so we get very little
We're the same.
where we have issues, with language. So French is really the only one. But I'm here to learn and understand more. So thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Does anybody actually employ full-time foreign language speakers in their either outsourced or internal teams? Did I hear somebody?
Hey, this is John. We don't source any, but I have multiple people in the company that I can turn to that are willing to jump and help and if necessary.
And is that just because by chance they speak another language? Or do you
That's
actually...
that's
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, it's just by
We have
chance
the
that they
same
speak
too.
French or Spanish. Actually, I put it in when I hire, I put it in as a nice to have.
Me too.
Love bilingual. Speaking Spanish or French would be a bonus hire.
Yeah, John, is that like Spanish, French, Beagle, Poodle? Do you also have?
Yes, we put in those as well.
This is Devitt McCormick, and we actually do have French-speaking reps at Premier that help support the Canadian market. But as a segue into that, right now, McCormick, we have different brands around the globe that we don't know what goes on, except every now and then something happens on social and they come to us going, what do we do? But our digital and creative team are looking to become more global and doing more stuff, including on social. So they've just pulled me into a call in the next couple of weeks to, how are we going to support on social? But, I just don't even know how much volume there's going to be. I mean, I'm from England, and just even my family in England are like, people complain. People ask questions.
That's so funny you say that, because our European business, like our whole group over there, does not actually believe customers want resolution to complaints.
Right.
They're like, oh, you guys give resolution to your customers? That's kind of what they're calling for.
A lot of other countries.
That's really a cultural thing over there. I mean, they just don't expect it. When at SBM, we had the same thing. We had, SBM's a French company, and they have significant operations in France, England, Scandinavia, and they have basically sales teams that sell and service to stores. But over there, if there's a complaint, it just goes to the store. Nobody calls or very few people call the corporate office. They just don't do it. It's the product didn't work. It didn't work.
Right.
They go buy something else.
Right. But what worries me too, on top of that other layer, are some of our brands like Frank's, Red Hot, and some of the, including Obey, is now in England. They're selling it at Morrison's and on Amazon in England. So, but some of our US like really big brands are now becoming global. And, my worst nightmare would be like if there was a problem with any of those products overseas, what are they going to do? One
of the things you could consider. One of the things that we did in the very beginning is we took our brands that were over in France and in the UK and in Spain and Italy and so forth. We just created some FAQs and we had them translated so that we could use those documents to send out on emails as a response. It's an over delivery because maybe they didn't ask all those questions, but it allowed us to address some of the things at our own pace, not in a live phone call, but we just kind of gathered, here's what the most commonly asked questions are. And when we would go into a new country, specifically Poland was complicated for us because we went into Poland with barefoot and Carlo Rossi, two of our fastest selling wine products. And so we had an abundance of what the FAQs were. So we translated that ahead of time and we had that ready to go for email and some of those things.
Oh, that's good.
That just gave us a little heads up on that. But the thing that I found the most complicated, I'll just share this out. You haven't asked this yet, Candice, but frankly, it's I agree with Steve. They don't call. And when we were over in China for the SOCAP China trip in 2013, Bob Litchi and Sheila and people from General Mills and a bunch of folks went over there. And one of the things that they said is that they take things back to the store. And they don't call in, and it's responsibility of the store owner. And they have strict rules in China for what the store owner is allowed to do for compensation. So it's a cultural kind of thing. And so we never got anything back from China because they weren't allowed to send it out of the country. And the areas that I found the most challenging with servicing foreign locations from the domestic US are customs, particularly, post 9/11, when there were so many regulations placed on shipping product across the border, and then compensation. So we used our sales offices to cut checks because there's no place you can do coupons or compensate with a free bottle of wine, unfortunately. So we had to give checks, and that's in the US as well. But we used our sales offices to print the checks on a local bank. Because we found that sometimes the fee for someone to take a domestically printed check exceeded the amount of the refund.
Wow.
In Canada, as an example, it's typically $25 cash a US check. So if you're only giving them back, $12 or $15 on a bottle of wine, and then you add $25 in service charges, that's crazy. So we started using our sales office to print checks for refunds and that kind of thing. So they were domestic or locally printed, I would say.
I like this topic. Let's keep going with it. Those of you guys doing business globally, when you need to issue compensation or refunds or checks or anything like that, right? Marie is having to go through, her in-country sales offices. What kinds of things are you guys running into, or how are you guys compensating your global markets? Jill or Vicky, I think you guys had talked about.
Teresa?
Yeah, we're just Canada. So we have Canadian coupons, and we actually use Canadian cash, which seems weird, but checks are so ridiculously expensive. We decided we would just send $5 bills, and we go to the bank and get cash. And our accounting team kept saying, "What? You're using cash? What do you mean?" And I'm like, "You guys, this is a small dollar situation. We aren't sending a lot."
So you're sending
out.
Canadian cash from the US via USPS, or mail somehow.
Exactly. And it works great. Is it the perfect solution? No, but it's not, it's way more expensive to send checks, and you can't order Costco gift cards if you don't live in Canada. So I can't buy gift cards there unless I have somebody in Canada doing that. And when we acquired a business that has the Canadian product line, they actually had a sales rep with a personal checking account who used to just write checks. And then that for sure, our accounting team said, "No, we're not doing that anymore." They're like, "Nope, that's not going to happen." So,
it's a similar situation with American Express. We tried to do American Express, but we couldn't buy foreign ones unless we're buying it in country. So from California, I could not buy one for Canada or France or anywhere else.
Interesting. Now I'm wondering if we're doing something wrong, because we send checks to our Canadian customers. So I think I need to look into that a little bit.
Yeah, I would say you might want to ask somebody what their experience is, because taking it to a Canadian bank and trying to cash a US denominated check is, you get in all kinds of exchange rate issues, and maybe it depends on the bank and if they charge a service charge or not. But it's we actually had to tell our we have very few calls from Canada when I was with SPM, but we had to actually tell people that, we'll pretty much do just about whatever you want us to do except send you money. and we didn't have a lot of options.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think that would be a good question. Is Doug still on, Doug Persley?
I know, I was hoping he was
on.
gonna.
That would be a perfect a solution for a Doug type activity to
He
find out how we
logged off.
foreign
Yeah.
currency or foreign compensation. Seems like if you could do it on Amazon, Amazon credits or that kind of thing, that would work too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Promotion Pod can do coupons to the Canadian market, but it ended up being not cost effective for the volume because the setup of each coupon. Because Linda looked at that. And right now I know that for Canada, Linda sends coupons and she sends gift cards. She can get to Costco, Vicki.
Yeah.
So, there's that. And we're no longer allowed to send checks out of our office. So we're doing all e-gift codes. So, but we were only doing them for US.
So when you say
Jill
e-gift codes, Deb, where are those e-gift codes coming from?
We're using Promotion Pod for those as well.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
They have like a suite that consumers can go in and pick whatever gift card they want. They want a MasterCard, or if they want a retailer gift card, they can.
And do those work in foreign countries?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were able to we use the Amazon, the ability to email the Amazon codes that Hershey had been doing at one point. And we were able to buy Canadian. So we were able to get Canadian Amazons. So we can send a Canadian Amazon code if the consumer purchases through Amazon and it's in Canadian currency. And so I actually used it one day because we have one sales rep in Canada and he won an American Visa card and he's like, I can't even use it. And I'm like, I got you covered. So I said,
nice.
I'll trade you. And so I sent it to him and they work perfect. So I was like, okay, good. It's a good check to make sure it all worked right too. So,
and I think COVID has helped with the acceptance of online gift cards, especially Amazon, because everybody will take them now. It's like no big deal. The barriers all down.
Agree.
Hey, Vicki, those codes, are they codes that are like from a spreadsheet, or is this like a little more formal?
Nope, they're right out of a spreadsheet. You download. Yep.
Is it dollar value or dollar value for your product only?
You can choose the dollar value and it can be used for anything. Cool. So it's just a straight up Amazon gift code. So what we did was we ordered in like $7 and $10 denominations, I think was what we did, because we have two different price points on the type of product that might be at shelf. And so that's what we use. And we just, if it's somebody's a larger purchase, we send them one $10 and one $7 one, but it's just an email. We copy it off a spreadsheet, pop it in an email and send it off. And the nice thing is you have no mailing. And so there's no mailing to do, and it's immediate. So as soon as you send the email, they have the code. So
and can you see that they actually open the code? Can they complain that the code's not working or anything like that?
We're out of the middle of it because they have to go to Amazon now because it's an Amazon code. So
Vicki, does that work domestically and in Canada?
Yes, but we have two different spreadsheets, one with Canadian codes and one with US codes. So we use both. We don't use them a ton.
I wonder if there's something like that available for other countries outside of the US and Canada as well.
Maybe.
Probably.
Yeah.
You would
Hi,
think
it's
so.
Nicole. Sorry, I'm here.
Hi.
We did that. Hi.
Nicole,
Hi.
there you are.
Yeah, I've been listening. So we did that for reimbursement. Same thing, similar to Vicki, what she said, different dollar value, but we use them for everywhere. Singapore, we did a lot of food service. When I worked with Premier on one of their programs, we had to reimburse in different countries, and we would go to Amazon in that country and send a gift card. And people really, it was very well received. And now at Wiley, it's similar. I mean, but we're global. So whatever the currency that hits our system, we refund in that same currency. So.
And there's no, I mean, I'm assuming, so Nicole, you're great to answer some of these questions, right? Because you deal with such a large group of different companies who are global in different areas. Are there stipulations as to what kinds of compensations you can provide in different countries or governance surrounding different legalities in that area?
Not that I know of. Our ordering system, I mean, it's kind of, I guess, however it hits like SAP, right? You think about if it's a euro, that's how it's
Mhm.
being set up that €1 is going to be refunded if the purchaser needs to be refunded. I imagine it's by country, but when I worked on this CPG brand, we had to decide on the rules of that reimbursement. Like, think about food service type of thing that happens in other countries. There is no real way to say how can we reimburse you for that. So anything that we did was run through legal, right, to make sure that it's okay. But a lot of times it was just customers who wanted to be reimbursed for something, and they would jump on a Amazon gift card because typically it's going to be more than what they paid for the item.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think that's really interesting. I love the Amazon gift code. I think that, obviously the detriment of that is that you can't be sure they're going to buy your product with that gift code, but that's not really what we're here to do, right? We're here to compensate for, their bad experience. So very cool. Okay, along that lines, on the topic of tools and technology, are you using different tools to service different customers within, say, like your CRM or via your phone systems? What kinds of things do you guys leverage in your global businesses that help you, manage that more cost efficiently or effectively with your resources? I can say, and like, we're very bare minimum right now. We have a translation tool that's actually built into Salesforce. It wasn't something that I went and tracked down. It was just something because we do global business that our sales team uses in Salesforce. And it's called SDL. It's like an in-place translation. I swear it's the exact same thing you get from Google Translate, but anytime you highlight anything in a Salesforce case, it translates it for you. But it really doesn't help us do that live language. So, I guess when I'm thinking about the most effective way, we're a small volume, like some of you guys have said. I cannot pay somebody to speak one native language, a different language, when we only get 20 contacts in that language a year. So my thought process is always like, how do I push them to a text way of communications that makes it easier for my English speaking group to handle that communication, right? And that's kind of where we are. Anybody have some fun tools? Nicole, do you guys use any neat tools?
You guys at Danone were bringing up some different things around the world. Did you ever get all of your contact centers on the same platforms?
That is still in process, Marie.
Well, it takes a long time. These things don't happen overnight, but I know
Yeah,
that
Pascal could certainly speak to it, and I'm sure Peggy could as well. From Pascal from the global perspective, but everybody is integrating onto Salesforce.
Salesforce.
Yeah.
So currently speaking, though, is your team in France on a different CRM than what you guys are?
Well, we use Excipio and we use Salesforce. So, yeah.
Okay.
We have a group in Australia that's using an old EPC, for those of you who remember. And we've got a meeting coming up with them because they kind of want to, let's get updated, and can we share, can we do, and whatever. And we're like, come on, you should have done it when we moved.
But now that you guys have done it, it will be easier for them because you've already fought the battles, right?
As long as they manage their own products, I'll be fine, right? And that's the scary thing, is putting other, when we've got brands all around the globe, I don't want to put, I just can't even imagine putting all of those in the system. I'd like to ask a question, if I may. Does anybody support social globally?
We do. Yeah.
How's that going?
It's been interesting. It's funny, like when John was saying that sometimes they just leverage their, core group that randomly speaks other languages. one of my in-house reps actually used to live in France, and she is pretty fluent in Spanish as well. So those are two of our larger markets. She handles all of our Latin America, Central America social media sites. We have a bunch of handles through them. And so, yeah, she translates what she can't understand through like Google Translate or our social media inline translation tool. And it works out great. It works awesome. And we actually just keep it in the other language in Salesforce, and maybe, you know, we might translate it if it has to go through some other workflow, but we know that if we're sending it on to a salesperson, they speak that language. So we just kind of push it through that way.
Sure. I wonder about, you know, I think about sometimes the regulatory language, you know, when we have to answer something that is really strict regulatory,
Yeah.
I'm not going to use Google Translate. I'm
No,
only allowed
that's-
to use the words they give me, you know?
Yeah, that's the best part about having somebody like Language Line on contract. You can give them your actual document and they can translate it for you. And and you can tell them this needs to be exactly like this, particularly with the legal stuff, but also like the manuals, for example. You know,
Yeah, I would
to have
suggest
somebody do a changeover manual, you've got to have all those parts, names, and all those words be exactly right.
Yeah, and likely your marketing department, if you're doing business globally, likely your marketing department has some sort of contract like that with a translation company, because surely they have somebody translating their marketing materials. And that's where I get mine. I don't have to, you know, contract with somebody personally. My marketing team holds that for me. So they'll do some of, like Marie said, more of that, that legal side of things if I need it.
I wanted to ask a question too about what are you doing for those of you with international? Are you integrating the reporting? Are you
So we're all over, and yeah, like our data is all integrated, but it's through the data lake, right? So everything is and from the different systems, right? Acquisitions, mergers, everybody has, not everybody has the same system or is working off of it. So you have to find a balance, but you know, the end goal is to be all, you know, everybody on the same system, which is like a dream, but you know.
Yeah.
Everybody on the same system at the same level of competency, right?
Not in my life, not in my lifetime.
dream. Me either.
I did want to say something to what Candice was talking about before, when you're like, we can't obviously afford to have like somebody speaking every language on staff all the time, but we supported recall work, like, or high volume event work for a company that was international, and they were in, I don't know, every country. And it's like, how do you in a second turn on something that is going to be,
that's my worst nightmare.
We worked with a company called toll-free forwarding, and what they did is because United International toll-free numbers do not always work, right? And they're very sketchy, but if you provision a local international number in these regions, and especially if you have business in that region, they're super easy to get. This company goes out and gets them for you, which is even better. And then they would hit our switch, right, with our telephony people, our IVR, and we would just have like language line USA or whichever, record the FAQs in all the languages we needed, and it would just play that information, and we would update it as needed. But very rarely did we need to get to a live agent in that case. When we had the messaging up front, it's like, you know, IVR, we think about it still being like, you know, the original way of contact, but it really is still super important, especially if you're doing work globally. But yeah, that company was great because we had a number in every country, and no matter what, it was hitting a switch in the United States. And from there, we were reporting on it. We were able to turn it on and off as we needed. We can put around, change messaging. It was really great to work with someone like them. So
what did you call that company? What was the name of that company?
Toll-free forwarding. They're out of California. They're great to work with.
So they would set the IVR in that country's language. If they still wanted to get through, it would forward to the US team. And then how would that be handled in that other language?
No, we actually controlled the entire telecom part of it, like all the telephony. They just provisioned all the numbers for us. So everything.
Oh.
So they did all that work. You don't have to worry about like a lot of countries you need to show paperwork for, hey, I want to do business here. And if you don't have an address there, right, especially like China and Japan, you need to show something. So they have business there, so they're able to secure the phone numbers. So from there, you know, we take those, they're regular numbers, we route them to a DID essentially, and it would hit the IVR, and we'd have the FAQs recorded as needed. Like you're always proactive, so we'd have messaging in the language of that country, so it's not just a dead DID, a dead number. But once the high volume event went live, we would get the messaging recorded with language line, whoever it was, and upload it to our IVR. So we were in control in our company. We were making all the changes. And if they needed to get to a live agent, you know, we would say like, this is going to be in English. Voicemail was always the best, right? Because then you could just, you know, get back to
you
them.
could queue those up, and then your rep that spoke that language could call them all at the same time.
Yeah. And they used it. We had 2 for each country. They used it for external, for any high volume events that they needed to worry about their products. And a lot of times it was like, this is the code, here's the issue, if you have this code, go to this website and fill out a form and we'll reimburse you. And then they used it for internal. So if they had actual businesses, like offices in that country, they used it almost like a check-in for like if something was going on in the world in that area. So at the time it was France. It was when that bombing happened in France. They needed a way to get people to check in. So we turned the number on for them. They gave it out to all their employees via email and they said, call in and check into this number for us to make sure that you're okay. And they were checking in that way. So they used it for internal and external. It's just a great resource. And they're like pennies when you think about it. Like they charge us.
But that would bypass the whole deal of having to have a local residence or a local business address there.
Yep.
Candice.
That's great. Yes.
I'm just calling time. It's 10 minutes after 2.
I know. Apparently everybody had to get off the line at 5
5
Eastern, huh?
Well, some people had to get off the line at 5, but we go till 20 more minutes if you guys still want to continue. I'm just doing a time check.
Yeah. I mean, I think most of us on the line, some of us have great experience in global. I mean, I'm definitely one of them. I've done a lot of research, but I'm just in the ramping up phase. So I'm definitely more on the learning end of this, just trying to spur that conversation. I know, Nicole, you've got a lot of experience here, and Steve and Marie. Yeah, I mean, Deb, you're kind of in the same place I am for the most part. Did you have any
I want to go like this.
The tools have improved. The tools have improved dramatically from when 2004, when I was setting up Gallows International, and the 90s when I was setting up for Dial. The tools, things like Google Translates and some of these other companies like this toll-free forwarding would have been a tremendous asset back in those days. So, but I do think it's worthwhile to have bilingual agents for the languages that you're going to be most dominant in, because then they just, if they're speaking, I mean, I had Spanish speakers on my staff everywhere I've ever worked because I've always been out here in the Southwest. And so that's not an issue. You're paying them for their service. It's not exclusively to Spanish speaking callers. It's to everybody. So they just flip into Spanish when you need it. Or same thing with my French speakers. They took normal calls. They weren't just reserved for French calls.
So that was sort of like, I mean, it wasn't like you didn't have them organized to where they were just handling, Spanish speaking lines. No. So like if you had one of your English speakers answer a Spanish speaking caller, you would just, they would just transfer it over to your Spanish speaker, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we're kind of at that area where, you know, we're such a small volume in those different international languages that we have to figure out a way to deal with it most cost efficiently. We can't go and hire, like I said. So we use Stafford.
And I would say, look into the colleges, if, especially now, there's an awful lot of people that are at college that take these liberal arts degrees or, you know, language degrees, those kinds of things, and those jobs are not that frequent. So sometimes you can luck out and get somebody. I got somebody who had actually worked for the UN. And when I went to Gallo, I got someone who had worked for the UN all over Europe and had multiple languages, but it was perfect because they knew the culture as well. The culture was equally important as the language.
And I think it's important to note that for French, there's French and there's Canadian French.
Yeah.
People are very specific about, you know, how they
and then there's
and
Quebec. And then there's
And then there's Quebec, exactly, which is special.
That's probably closest to the French Canadian, the Quebecois.
Yeah.
I just think you have to make a list of all the services you do. If you're just starting out, you got to think about all the services that you do for domestic callers or domestic emailers or domestic social, and say, what of these things can we provide? Do we build it or buy it? And, you know, some things you don't even have to do. For example, if you don't have social in that country, then you don't have to build that on right away, but it's something you could add later.
There's some really amazing tools out there. Like you said, Marie, I was just searching through Salesforce the other day because somebody was talking about a bot that actually, like, there's no transition really in between what you're seeing and what they're seeing. Like, it's very seamless, but they see it in their native language and you see it in your native language, but there's no, you can't tell that anything is different. So the translation is happening automatically between, you know, your conversation or your chat conversation online. And I thought, wouldn't that be amazing? And if you had a recall and a global recall, you know, a recall bot that's stood up on your website that's, you know, just is in their native language or something. So there's some really cool tools out there.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, Candice, is to understand, you know, how many of those contacts do you get? You know, what's the volume like, and how do you make a good business decision of whether you basically power by the minute, or do you buy something that you can, you know, you can put on your, connect throughout your organization.
That's so true. You know, when you're thinking about where to start, it's like, well, what are my biggest languages that I need to concentrate on? Right. So I've been doing a lot of research. So there's I don't know if you guys are familiar with Google Analytics, but you can actually see what countries are trafficking your website the most. And they say to, you know, kind of do your breakdown that way when you're deciding how to translate your website or what kinds of different language foreign speaking reps to take on as well. So I thought that was kind of cool.
The other thing you might think about too is if you acquire products from other countries or companies in other countries, then you have to immediately be in a position to add those to your portfolio. And that might make the decision for you.
Right.
Or your brands might decide to launch something.
Oh, you paused, Marie.
Marie.
Might have frozen.
Yeah, I mean, we had at Orbitz, we had a subsidiary that was acquired in eBookers over in Europe, and all of those individual branches had in-country contact sales offices, which is where most of the contacts went to. So that's where we were able to get the support, and it was just a matter of coordinating with eBookers to make sure that we were, you know, to determine what their policies were, what our policies were, and how we, you know, mesh them together so that we know what, you know, so we could be consistent across the board. But we didn't handle, in the US, we didn't handle any eBookers, and they didn't handle any contacts for the US. I think they started figuring out how to do that after I left the company, but it was it was just a matter of getting the policies delineated and making sure they had the languages covered.
It looks like our Zoom link is starting to get unstable. I just got a couple of flashes and then you guys were locked for a moment. I don't know if it's mine or if it's the actual Zoom.
Yeah,
Might
you
be
were-
yours,
You
Marie.
were frozen
Yep.
there for a minute.
Yeah, we've been talking.
Okay.
We've been
Well-
talking about you since you dropped off.
Well, I just wasn't sure since I'm doing the recording where the glitch was.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
It's a
But,
great photo.
bes-
It was all right.
besides Nicole and Chip, who are in the outsourced contact center industry, we do have some really knowledgeable people within SOCAP who
Mhm.
do this internationally, have international operations on a daily basis. It might be good
Yeah.
to have a follow-up with some of the international outsource companies to do a roundtable on almost best practices for small, medium, and larger size companies.
I was thinking this kind of gave me an idea, right, for the next SOCAP. It's like, I would love, I think there's so many of us that are in this position and there's so much that we can learn from companies that are doing this really well.
Yeah,
I think that'd be a
Jill-
great round.
Too bad, like somebody
Jill
like,
and
somebody
Eliza.
like Dave Shapiro's not on the call today,
Yeah.
right, Chip?
Yeah,
Don't
and
you
my boss.
Yeah.
I was
Bob
gonna say Jill
Yeah.
and Eliza had requested this. This was one of the table topics at symposium because of this very thing. Because there's so many
Eliza
nuances.
got in contact with me and I think they're off work for Yom Kippur right now.
Yeah,
So-
they are. But that might be a follow-up for you. And the other one who might be a follow-up for you is Cody and Kellogg's and General Mills. Kellogg's went on the China trip. I know they have a process across the globe. They have an office in China. Unilever had a shared scenario in China, but that's been, a number of years ago. But
well, Rakib is from General Mills, right? She was on
Mhm.
earlier.
yeah, and he was on earlier. So there's a couple
Oh,
of
okay.
other companies that have been doing it for a while. And also I would recommend you talk to Pascal at Danone or Peggy.
Who's
Yeah.
lining up the topics for is it next spring?
Yeah.
SOCAP?
We haven't started working on that yet, but we will. But
Yeah,
this-
give yourself a break. We just got finished with fall.
yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? And maybe I missed it because there's been so much conversation going on, but some of the folks, I mean, every now and then we get the push to go to Salesforce. Steve spent a good hour with me talking to me about it, I don't know, a year or so ago. But, one of the biggest challenges is, all the data and all the product that you're trying to report on if there is an issue, right? Because you've got all the products in your system. But I have no earthly idea what's going on everywhere else. But if everybody around the globe is on Salesforce, then you would have access to all of that, right?
Yeah.
Well,
we're
it
seeing-
depends on how you
Essentially.
structure your IT. I think
Yeah.
if you.
Steve and I have talked about this.
Yeah, if you, when I was looking at, and we were comparing Salesforce to several other vendors, Chip included, at Amplify suit prior to the merger. One of the things that Chip counseled on, which is true, is you can always export the data in whatever form the company wants. So if there's a common platform, the question is, how do you export it? And, are they willing to, how can you set that up and at what cost and all that kind of stuff? I mean, so I think that there are pros and cons like anything else, but you should be able to export the data in just about any format that you need to in any way, by product, make sure you match up the fields, obviously, and after that, it should be just bits and bytes.
If you're feeding the data lake, you can
Yeah.
feed it a lot of ways. It doesn't have to be all Salesforce. It doesn't have to be all, and that's one of the things we counsel on as well, is that you get hung up on, oh my goodness, I got to have it all into Salesforce. Well,
You don't.
You don't. The data lake today will take feeds everywhere and put it in that format that Steve's talking about, that then you can go back and no matter what the division, can go in and extract the intelligence out of all the data. Because that's one of the things we see is the data is there, but the extraction of the intelligence from the data, which isn't in one place, isn't done as much. So,
right.
But,
And
the data lake.
because there's multiple instances of Salesforce, right? So you can all be on Salesforce and we might all be on different instances.
They
of it.
all read into each other though.
Yeah.
I'm not here to sell Salesforce, but there are definitely some benefits to having different teams in that system, right? Your processes are more connected. So for me, it's like, I'm not even really, there's parts of the data I'm in charge of, but that all goes into our data lake as well. And we actually have a data team that does whatever the company needs to do with that data. The thing that I love about Salesforce is that I don't have to kick out an email to our sales team to say, hey, I got this contact, you need to follow up with it. I literally just shove it like in, like we have a process that's built into customer service. Yeah, there's rules and workflows built into the back end. And I am now, the longer that we're in it, seeing some really great benefits from my team being central to all of this triaging. So there are definitely some great benefits.
I feel the same way. I think everybody was like super afraid of Salesforce for a long time. And then
it's a
when you're
beast.
actually in it, you're like, wow, it's where everybody's headed. You know, I think it's
well, and I think people were afraid of it. Like you said, people were afraid of it. And it also wasn't designed for consumer affairs. It was designed for all the other processes. So they had some real catch up to do, which they have done more recently. But the data lake is the answer because, you know, one of the things to consider is most of the time people who go to new systems have to decide what to keep and what to jettison. If you have a data lake, you can keep it all forever and you don't have to jettison anything. And so someday if you want to do a 10-year analysis of your data, you know, or you want to watch a product over its sales arc, you have all of that there to see.
But your company has to, your Salesforce instance is only as good as your company's infrastructure is. That's like your IT and everything. So you better make sure they're on your side if that's the way you're going.
I'm not pitching Wiley, I'm not pitching Salesforce either, but Dreamforce is one of the biggest conferences, right? And they just had it in San Francisco, I think last month, right?
Last one.
One of our people who I work directly with, who's on Bob's team, my boss, was asked to be a keynote at Dreamforce. And he's cool. He's a young dude, but it's the work that they're doing with automation and trying to say like, be where the customer is and we want to personalize experiences. And so Salesforce became a partner of us. And so they beta test a lot with us because of that infrastructure, because of what the customer solutions technology team is building. They are making it work for us in our world, which they would do for anyone if you have a good tech team that's going to help you build it.
They can make money off that process.
Exactly. Yeah.
They can make money. They won't do anything for free and you will pay through the nose.
Big time.
It's only money.
It's only money. Yeah. Well, thank you, Candice. I think we probably ought to wrap this up here. It's
this is awesome. I've got some follow-up questions. I can, whoever is doing the spring conference setup, I've got a bunch of things written down. Of course, we have this recording. So
yeah, and your perspective will be different even by then because you'll learn so much more between now and then.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. I love seeing all your faces.
Absolutely. Very helpful.
Wait, don't hang up. What? You had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't have a golf outing to pitch here until we get to spring, but I will say that next week, Central Region is doing a webinar on work at home. And we've partnered with Kelly Connect, who has been doing it for years, well before COVID. And I just invite everybody, it's 2:00 Eastern time. So we're bringing the experts who've been doing it and they're going to share some tips that you may not have thought of. So I just throw that out to everybody next Wednesday next Thursday at 2:00, the 13th.
Thank you, Chip. The other thing I wanted to bring up to everybody is next month, we're having a new product show and tell. So Deb, I hope something from McCormick could be part of that. And Candice, same thing. I'd love to see some of your products. Nicole, some of your products. We need to make it more than just a food and beverage. We need to branch out. So I hope that we could see some products and just understand a little bit more about what are the types of things that our businesses are selling, because then you make customers out of people who didn't really know anything about your product line.
Yeah.
So
I think Deb
guys
should
will
share some Old Bay
consider.
vodka. That would help out.
Oh,
You
yeah,
got
I think
But
so.
you got some, Steve. I said.
I'll tell you
Did.
what.
I've got it. You don't have to send me any. I've got mine already.
But I'll tell you, you have a lot of interesting products and a lot of people cook, and particularly since the pandemic, more people cook. And of course, they're cooking potatoes and they're doing other things. So I think
don't remind me, we couldn't get them any.
exactly. So I really hope you guys will do a show and tell. I put a blurb in the Pulse because we need that. Lisa's gonna moderate it.
I think Linda already said that we were going to do something. And
Oh,
I forget
good.
what she told me, what product, but I think I know what
And
it
Chip,
is.
Chip, if you have any clients who you want to
Yeah.
have somebody pitch product.
Absolutely. But I was going to say to Deb, I think we ought to have a cooking show with you. Maybe you
I think
take
so,
20
too.
minutes and show us how to cook with some of your products. I think that would be interesting.
I'll assign that to Linda. She's not here.
Yeah. You know what? You know what Linda did a few years ago? This is was very personal to me a few years ago. Gosh, this is probably going back 5 years at least. She gave a couple of comments in one of her presentations about the fact that spices expire and some different things like that. And oh my gosh, I went home from wherever we were and I went through all my spice drawer and I realized that I had a dry mustard that didn't even have a UPC code on it. That's how old it was.
Oh,
But
well, I
those
have
are
to
the kinds
tell
of little
you,
tips people love.
I have to tell you that during COVID at the beginning, everybody was cooking at home like big time.
Yeah.
And we were telling people, we actually put messaging on our phone to not throw out your spices because we knew we couldn't produce enough for everybody who was cooking at home because we were having, so we actually were telling people, don't throw it out.
Don't pay attention to that expiration.
You know, they will just, you just have to add a little bit more because they may lose their flavor over time.
Yeah. But that, I mean, that was good advice then, because I know you guys have, we're faced with many challenges for product supply.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think people actually kind of, we educated them on that. And I think they trusted us and appreciated it, that we're not telling you to throw out something that then you're going to be mad.
I think that's a smart strategy. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to turn off the recording now, and I hope you all have a good day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Take care. Good job,
Candice.
Candice. Thank you.
Good job.